Welcome to the Genius of Woman video series, where we'll explore the gift of the feminine genius. In this series, we will seek to understand some underlying philosophies that have shaped the way women are seen in our culture today. We will also explore how Jesus treated women and how this treatment leads us to appreciate women in a new way. Then we will look to St. John Paul II's letter on women to dive deeper into Catholic teaching on femininity. Finally, we'll see how we can live a new feminism, one that does not contradict Catholic teaching. So here we go. In this, our first of 3 sessions, we'll take a brief look at some underlying philosophies that have shaped how women have been viewed in our culture. Now, to do this, we're going to look at a very brief and very abbreviated history of how women have been viewed. And I just want to be absolutely clear here and offer a disclaimer. The history contained here is in no way comprehensive. We just want to mention some of what transpired so we can understand how femininity was being lived in different time periods and how the view of women in society has evolved. Feminism is often talked about as a series of waves. These waves articulate struggles of women in our culture and how they attempted to overcome them, and will bring us to see some issues that women face in our culture today. The first wave of feminism, although there's some debate, began in the late 19th century, and it comes from the end of the movement to end slavery, and also was taking place as the temperance movement was popular, meaning the prohibition against alcohol. Some heroes of the first wave of feminism include Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. So if you looked up first wave feminism, you would see writings by these two women who really spearheaded the effort to help women in the issues they fought against during this time period, such as being trapped in abusive marriages, having to be victimized by unfair custody laws, and the rights of widows to own the property of their husbands. It was common practice that if a man died, women would only get about 1/3 of their property. This left a lot of women destitute in this time period. So what these women, the positives that these women were fighting for, was that they said we need laws that protect women. At the end of this first wave, in the year 1920, one of the results of the first wave was that women were allowed to vote for the first time. The second wave of feminism, again, much debate is made about when this wave actually began. Some people place it as early as the 1950s or 60s, but then some say it didn't start until the 80s. Either way, the second wave of feminism took place during World War II, when women were called to play a different role in society. Up until World War II, it was more common for women to stay home and take care of the home and the children. But when the soldiers were sent off in World War II and many of our men were fighting overseas, women entered the workforce in record numbers. They became more visible in the public sphere. And then when the men came back from war, women had found a new place in society and in the workforce and wanted to remain in the workforce. Some issues that the second wave tried to accomplish for women included equal pay for equal work, sexual freedom, and the right to abortion and contraception. These last two things were added later. And if we look at their perspective on it, they saw that now that they were competing with men in the workplace, they had to function like men to be able to be competitive. So instead of the industries looking at women, recognizing their genius and recognizing that women had this unique capability of being mothers, what happened was women were often victimized and treated as less than in the workplace because they would have to do things like take maternity leave. And so a response to this was women fighting for the right to abortion and contraception. It was really a work competition, right? So a man could get ahead at work faster because he never had to take maternity leave. So this right to abortion became part of what women started to fight for so that they could also be competitive in the workplace. Now, for the third or even fourth waves of feminism, some people would even say we're beyond that, the fifth wave of feminism, etc. But there's no clear, definitive statement on this. If you go to 50 different websites, it'll say 50 different things about when a third wave or a fourth wave. Some will even say that we've never left the second wave. So there's much debate and vast differences depending on where you look regarding third or fourth wave feminism. But there seems to be one general thread that connects, even though there's so much debate about if there's a third wave or a fourth wave, and much less when it would have begun. But the only agreement among all of them seems to be that these waves are concerned about gender non-conformity. So erasing the difference between men and women altogether. We see that some of the responses to obstacles faced by women in the first and second waves of feminism were positive and helped women progress in being respected. For instance, winning the right to vote or being able to pursue careers. However, we also see that negative influences also entered the feminist movement. These negative influences led to some practices that are sometimes seen as benefiting women, but in reality, these negative influences are distorting an authentic vision of femininity. And so now we're going to turn our attention to some of the underlying philosophies that helped us arrive at these negative influences. The painting that you see on your screen is a famous painting called the School of Athens. And it contains all these people that you see are famous philosophers. But we're going to turn our attention to the two in the middle. The first figure that you see, the one on the left, is Plato. And you see that he's pointing up. And then the figure next to him, the one on the right, is his most famous student, Aristotle. Aristotle, you see, has his hand pointed toward the ground. This is a symbolic in the painting to notate that how these two men saw reality. So Plato saw reality, at least the physical reality, as basically an illusion, because Plato said that things are real because of essence, right? So the essence is what something is. So Plato said that all the essences of things were a spiritual reality. So whatever exists has a spiritual reality that is mirrored in the material world. And so he's pointing up because his theory was that everything, real reality, things that actually exist, are the essence of things, are all contained in a spiritual realm, a realm that he called the world of the forms. Form is another word that is used for essence. Now, every teacher's nightmare, as a teacher myself, I can tell you it's a nightmare, that your most famous student would spend his life trying to disprove everything that you taught. And that's exactly what Aristotle did. To Aristotle, Plato's theory that the reality of things existed apart from the material reality didn't make sense. And I'm sure for you it might not make sense either. How can things that are composites, for instance, only be existing in the world of the forms? Or how can something that's completely material, like a table or a chair, have a spiritual essence that's existing only in the forms? It doesn't make much sense. So Aristotle had the theory of marrying the two and said that anywhere that we see a material reality existing, its essence has to be with it. And so he believed in composite things. So If I have a chair, its essence is chair. What the thing is a chair, and that essence is not separate from the material reality of chair. It's contained within the material. Now, unfortunately, when it came to a theory about women, these two philosophers and their opposite theories did not bode well for femininity. So Plato, his theory about women was called sex unity theory. So for him, he saw, of course, a separation between material reality and spiritual reality. This is called dualism. So only in the world of the forms or the essences can we find what is real. So Plato claims that the true nature or the true essence of the person is the spiritual reality that he called the soul. And Plato said that human souls are neither male nor female. And since he didn't see material reality as really the essence of things, or the essence was separate from the material reality, therefore, bodily existence to him was merely an appearance or an illusion of the true reality that existed in the spiritual realm only. Plato also believed in reincarnation. So making the soul neither male nor female, or kind of like an androgynous kind of being, would then allow for reincarnation. So if I'm going to be reincarnated in a series of lifetimes and could be reincarnated as any body, like as in the form of a body, but be reincarnated either as male or female, then my soul can't have a gender, because how could I have a soul that's engendered but be reincarnated in the opposite gender? So for him, he had to make his theory make sense, he had to make the soul of the human person be neither male nor female. And since the person would want to finish the cycle of reincarnation and arrive at true reality, which for him was purely spiritual in the world of the forms, we had to be free of the body to arrive at this reality. So according to Plato, the body was simply a prison for the soul. And I had to progress in wisdom and virtue to escape this cycle of reincarnation and arrive at the true reality, which was purely spiritual. And so the person's goal throughout his lifetime would be to keep progressing in wisdom and virtue. Now, even though Plato didn't see any difference between a male soul and a female soul, he did recognize that the bodies were different, even though he also said they were an illusion. But Plato claimed that female bodies are weaker. Still, the souls are the same kind of essences. They're still equal, but the bodies aren't equal. So, for Plato, in the world where it counts, in the world of the forms, the male soul and woman's soul are not engendered. They're not different things. That made them equal. So really, he could still claim that there's no real difference between women and men. But he said, if a soul happens to be reincarnated in the body of a woman, it's because their last incarnation or their last lifetime didn't go so well. So they are reincarnated as the weaker sex. So for Plato, being a woman was thought to be a penalty, because the soul that was incarnate in a woman's body had a weaker starting point. It was harder for women to grow in wisdom and virtue. So for Plato, men and women are equal in the sense that their souls are the same. And therefore for him, he would say, well, in your essence, there's no real difference between men and women. Since the body is only an outward appearance, the body is not real. It's not reality. So rationality, or the ability to think, is exalted, or the spiritual operation of rationality is exalted. And the body, in Plato's theory, is denigrated and devalued, meaning that the body really doesn't have anything to do with who the person is, or even with my real self. So my real self is just my soul. It doesn't have anything to do, it's completely disconnected from my body. Later, this theory of Plato's results in what we can call today equality feminism. Now, I don't want anyone who believes in equality feminism to get upset. We're not talking about those good influences of those first two waves, like women having the right to vote, or women having the right to work and pursue the career they want to pursue and have equal pay. These were positives that the two waves brought to us. Instead, by equality feminism, we mean in the extreme. We mean to say that there's no difference at all between men and women. Rather, men and women are equal because they are the same in their essence. So they can say that there's no real difference between male and female. So for Plato, unity means sameness. We could even retitle his theory sex sameness theory. That really the sexes are exactly the same because in the only reality that counts, the world of the forms or essences, they're the same. Now, Aristotle, his theory about women is called sex polarity theory. Aristotle, in addition to being a philosopher and a student of Plato, was also a biologist. Now, we're talking about a biologist in BC, right? 400, 500 BC. So, remembering that unlike his teacher Plato, who focused on the soul, Aristotle tended to focus on the material reality as where reality is found. But it was to the detriment of the soul, of the spiritual. So for Aristotle, reality has to be first and foremost in the material world. There's no separate reality in the spiritual realm. There's no separate world of forms. What you see in front of you in the material world, its essence is contained within it. And so when explaining the difference between men and women, since his entire theory was based on observation, what you could see, and as a biologist, he would be observing things like male and female contribution to procreation. And this is where he saw the biggest difference between men and women. So Aristotle develops an entire system regarding relationships between men and women based on this one point. What do men and women contribute to procreation? In a world where science was simply observation, without anything like microscopes or x-rays or ultrasound, right? No technology at all. The only thing that they had to rely on was their ability to observe stuff. So this is how science was done. So whenever you're observing the procreative act, the male is really the only one that has any observable contribution to procreation. So whenever Aristotle observed this in men and women, he came to the conclusion when he asked the question, what does the woman contribute to procreation? Of course, his answer was nothing, because nothing was observable by the human eye when it came to women and procreation. Instead, Aristotle said that in procreation, the man is the one that gives the seed, and the woman warms the seed, right? And so her job is just to hold the new life, let it grow, and then the new life comes forth. But the woman was just seen as an incubator of the seed that was provided by man. Since she had no observable role in procreation, Aristotle claims that really women are just infertile men. Fertility was seen as the fullness of humanity, or the fullness of what humans can do. And so the male was considered to be by him the fullness of humanity, while women were looked at as a lack of the fullness of humanity because they had no role in procreation. So sex polarity theory says that the difference between men and women is that one sex is fundamentally superior to the other. In Aristotle's case, he said that men were superior. But this theory could actually work both ways. Men could claim superiority over women, or vice versa. Women could claim superiority over men. And that's exactly what happened when this theory was applied to feminism. This theory of sex polarity results in what is called difference feminism. Again, difference feminism, just like equality feminism, is an extreme. And in this extreme of difference feminism, the female is supposed to be superior to the male. This developed into an anti-male feminism. This brings us to the end of our first video. Please click on video 2 to be able to explore how Jesus changed the perception that we have of women in our culture.